Hello and welcome to another episode of Press A to Play Pokemon. Last we left off, we were heading towards Mount Moon, and hopefully we'll get there by the end of the episode, but there's lots of trainer battles ahead of us. So yeah, and there hasn't been much development since I last left you guys. We're going to be doing a lot of training on the way there. There's lots of unavoidable trainer battles, so might as well just do them and get them out of the way. Let's just check who we have here. Who do we want to train up? Any suggestions from you guys? If you guys want to suggest like what Pokemon you want me to catch, or who your favorite from the team is, so that I could train them up or level up. If it's like Nidoking or something, I can try and work towards him. But yeah, please just leave it below. Best way to, keep in contact, I guess. Oh man, I just realized right ahead of us is the fairly infamous Shorts trainer. For those of you that don't know, but you might have heard the saying, shorts are comfy and easy to wear. Originated from this game. The Pokemon series has come up with a lot of memes, actually. It's quite interesting. I guess just because so many people played it when they were young. It's kind of like a common denominator for many gamers. Because Pokemon really was everywhere during the late 90s. It's hard to get away from it. Let's switch with Brandomir, the Nidoran. But yeah, Pokemon was pretty pervasive, so I'm not surprised that so many memes came out of it. Creepypastas as well. I was reading a creepypasta recently about a theory about Ash actually being in a coma. Ash from the anime. It was really interesting. Just to sum it up for you guys, it was basically talking about how the fact that Ash never ages is really because he's in a coma. Basically everything that happens in the show is wish fulfillment from his unconscious mind. It was, as all creepypastas, just kind of mildly thought-provoking, eerie, and completely unbased in anything. But it's still interesting. Oh, it's a Beedrill. I've always liked Beedrill. I don't know why. Well, maybe not always. I was always, when I was young, I was always the type to be one or the other. If there was some sort of choice among young people, I always subscribed to, oh, there's a big fight between Star Trek and Star Wars. Well, I guess I'm picking Star Wars because I can't pick both. That's completely insane. So at the beginning I always loved Butterfree, but once I grew older, I realized Beedrill's fucking awesome. Who doesn't want a giant bee to train up, attack things with? Actually, there was always a divide in my younger mind about the tougher Pokemon versus the cooler / cuter Pokemon. So Pokemon like Pikachu, Squirtle, who I'd liked, definitely fell into the latter category, whereas Pokemon like Beedrill, Sparrow, Mankey definitely fell into the tougher category. And I always thought of people, if I perceive them as tougher, would have those types of Pokemon, or like Graveler and Pokemon. Oh, there's another trainer. Graveler and Pokemon like that. Lots of rock types. But I'm curious, do you guys think of Pokemon in that way? I mean, I guess it's kind of obvious, but do you put them into different categories? That's one of the big categories that even now I kind of subscribe to. It's either like a tougher Pokemon or a cooler looking Pokemon. And by tougher, I don't exactly mean like Garchomp would probably be like a tough Pokemon in most people's eyes, but I put it more into the cool category. I guess it's kind of obvious, but it's more like overlooked Pokemon that I consider tough, like Graveler, like Sparrow. You don't think of those ever, And for some reason, I always think that like hiker type trainers would have those types of Pokemon. So lots of fighting types, lots of rock types. I mean, not all Pokemon fit into that kind of subset. I mean, Raichu is cool, but he's also really underrated, and like no one ever used him. So would you put him into the second category? I know these are really ill-defined, but kind of just rambling, so I guess it doesn't matter. Am I going to lose Raymond? I don't think so. One thing I wanted to mention was the fact that Special is overpowered. For those of you that don't know, in Generation 1 there was only, what? Health, Attack, Defense, Speed, and Special. So 5 stats for your Pokemon. Whereas nowadays there's 6. Hence 6 IVs. And the reason for that was because early on in Generation 1, there was no special defense and special attack stat. It was just one stat. So a Pokemon who was good at like psychic type attacks or whatever was also good at defending against those. There was no distinction between the two. If you're good with special attacks, it means you were resistant to special attacks, and vice versa. In Generation 2, they split that. I'm not quite sure why. I'd be interested actually to see the development notes to why they split that. It kind of makes sense. Definitely because it increases the potential move pool so much. It allows you just to put in different mechanics into the game. Like nowadays we have many special type or special moves that do physical damage, and vice versa. Actually, I don't know if we have. No, because things like the Aura move that Lucario has uses your physical stat, but is countered as a special stat. Anyways, it gives you a lot more variety, and they switch it up, and it gives Pokemon a lot more variety. So Pokemon could be very good offensively with their special attack, but very weak to it as well, and vice versa on different ratios of the two. So it's not surprising that they split it, but I really want to see the reason why and what brought that about. Did they just think of that already naturally, or? Yeah, there's lots of different. Oh my god, lost. This was, sorry, I don't know if I mentioned, this was the Comfy Shorts trainer. I always wear shorts, even in winter. What a silly child. I've forgotten what I was talking about. Creepypastas? I guess we'll go back to there. But there's lots of them for Pokemon. I mean, the infamous Pokemon Black cartridge. The Lavender Town myth. Very many came from Pokemon. And again, it's just because it was such a cultural phenomenon. There isn't much in this area for me to kind of pick at and talk about because it's just kind of in between place between Mount Moon, which has some more interesting aspects to it. Here is just like the first real area. I mean, you were in the Viridian Forest where you trained up your Pokemon, and you came across trainer battles for the first time. Then you got to your first gym, which gave you your first real challenge, and maybe you had to force you to grind a little bit in the wilds around Pewter City. I remember what it was called, or was it Pewter Town? Fuck. And this is the first area where it's just a grind to get through. You're fighting trainers. Most of them are unavoidable if you want to advance. And it really gives you a taste of what's to come for your Pokemon quest, your Pokemon adventure. I feel like Pokemon, didn't lay the foundations for RPGs, because there was lots of RPGs before now. Although this might seem ancient just because of the graphics, it was on Game Boy. Consoles were a little more advanced than this at the time. And games in general were quite developed by this point. So Pokemon definitely borrowed from lots of RPGs before it, but it's definitely a competent one. They didn't mess up too much. I mean, yeah, there are stuff like the sleep and the continuous attacks that I've mentioned before, but it's definitely fairly competent, which I think one of the reasons why it was so popular. Besides the novel idea of capturing and training creatures. The history behind the development of Pokemon is quite interesting. I mean, just the fact that the creator himself was kind of reminiscent of childhood adventures catching bugs, which really led him to... I want to switch Pokemon. Which really led him to develop this game, because he felt that children nowadays couldn't really go out and explore quite as much as he could before. Couldn't explore caves like he had when he was younger and find different fascinating creatures. Jigglypuff, what? The fascinating creatures. Should I capture Jigglypuff even with its lopsided eyes and forehead penis? Let's capture a Jigglypuff. If I don't kill it right away. Hopefully, if I remember, we'll go back to the topic of the development of Pokemon, but I want to briefly mention the fact that Jigglypuff is in Smash Bros. And the reason it's in Smash Bros. Is because at the time of the first Smash Bros., which Jigglypuff is a veteran from the first Smash Brothers. And the reason why is because in the anime, at least I'm pretty sure this is the reason why. In the anime, Jigglypuff was a recurring character. It would, in the first season and maybe into the second season, it kept showing up, kept putting Ash and crew to sleep, and it was just a recurring character. And in the anime, she went away. I'm assuming she's a she. She went away, and for some reason, she's never left Smash Bros. Just like because I guess she was like a kind of a niche character. So people who liked her a lot, and if they got rid of her, they kind of be, am I still asleep? Are you kidding me? Come on! Oh yeah, I'm trying to capture her. What am I doing? This is actually keeping me, damn it, from killing her. Yeah, because she's a niche character, certain aspects would riot if she was removed. So they've kind of kept her. Also, I'm sure the creator of Smash Brothers quite likes Jigglypuff. Is why. Have they removed any, like, OG characters? I don't think so, actually. Maybe that's another reason. They just haven't removed any of the original Smash Brothers characters. Are you kidding me? Before we go back to the development, because it just worked right now, what lots of young kids did in Pokemon, because it just became legend, became common schoolyard storytelling, that if you hold down B when catching a Pokemon, it increases your chances. Now, it doesn't matter if that's true or false. If it increases it even 1 iota, let's call Scott. It doesn't matter 1 iota if holding down B, or some people might have heard it up B or up A, changes in with the area, but it doesn't matter if it does anything, because it feels like it does something. It gives you... It almost should have been programmed into the game, because it gives you something to do while you're catching the Pokemon. It's one of the main focuses of the games. You're supposed to catch all 150 whatever the fuck Pokemon. And besides whittling it down to low health, which is a challenge, especially in certain... Oh, I'm still asleep. I should really pay attention instead of babbling. It doesn't... It provides a challenge to... Oh, level 14 and I got level 5? Rip off. Oh, it's a trainer battle, that's why. Again, I really should pay attention. Besides the challenge of trying to whittle down the Pokemon to low health, and then the physical act of going to your bag and throwing the Pokeball. After that, there's nothing. It's just up to chance. And even if they added the press down B to do nothing but make you think that it's helping you catch the Pokemon, it would have added something. And I think that's why it was so prevalent, because it made you feel like you were really trying to catch this Pokemon, like you were forcing your will into the game. And it did about as much as staring at the Pokeball, if it was real, would have done. What got disabled? Disable's an annoying move. But yeah, there's again lots of myths, creepypastas, whatever about Pokemon. It's just very pervasive. But going back to the original development, the developer really lamented the fact that modern day kids, and this was back in the 90s compared to now, which I'm sure is even more true, they couldn't, like, it wasn't just because they didn't want to, they couldn't go outside as much because there were so many fears of, you know, them getting into trouble or getting hurt or whatever, where before this wasn't as big a problem. Yes, killed the Jigglypuff, and that only took forever. So he wanted to kind of give the kids something with a more modern flavor, and that was Pokemon, to be able to catch and grow different things like he had done as a kid, and to explore different areas as he had with a kid. And obviously there's more fantastical elements, like being able to carry this creature around with you that breathes fire or can summon a torrent of water from its mouth at will, which is another aspect of why it's so fun. And also, I was recently listening to a show about this. He was very fascinated with the fact that there was, I believe it was a Dragon Quest game that he had been playing, and there was a very rare drop for a certain item after beating a certain enemy to get a certain item that was extremely good. And he himself had never gotten it. Whereas a friend, and then later on co-founder of the Game Freak company, or is it Pokemon company? Game Freak? Either one, I'm sorry. I'm not terribly familiar with this, but his friend had gotten it, the rare drop, and he had always wished that there was some sort of way to transfer these rare items or what have you from person to person, which is why trading is such a large aspect of the Pokemon games. Because did I never learn Harden? Kind of bouncing all over the place today, but the trading aspect was something that he really thought was interesting and necessary. Because when you have something that you worked hard to get, or is just a rare drop, and you were lucky enough to find it, those two, or one of the or two things from the same category, it was fun to trade. Like, it really made you like, oh, do I want to, like, think if you ever had Pokemon cards, like, oh, you have this really rare card that you're just lucky enough to get. Do you want to trade that for another rare card that someone else was lucky enough to get, just because you like that Pokemon more, or what have you? And that kind of like almost haggling, either good-naturedly or not, in the schoolyard. It was very interesting, and to introduce that into Pokemon was, I feel, a very smart move. Also, it allowed them to sell 2 different copies of the games, but they really stuck to that mentality of trading, like interacting and trading with other people was a core aspect of the games, which I thought was very, very interesting. But there's many different interesting aspects to the development of Pokemon, which I hope I could remember, but it's not all coming to me. I mean, one interesting fact that I've always, it surprised me because I didn't know it for a very long time. It wasn't until well after the fact, until I was 6, 7, 8 years into playing Pokemon, was that there was, in Japan, or rather I'll start with America. In America, it was a red and blue version. That was the version that, am I gonna die? That everyone is familiar with and knows about. In Japan, it was red and green. And that was actually an older version. It was the first version of Pokemon, the red and green versions, in Japan. And there were sprites weren't quite as nice. I mean, the Pidgey actually kind of looks like a bird. The back sprites for Nidoran and the rest of my Pokemon are not always that detailed or great. Fucking sand attack. At least it's poisoned. Much of the sprite work was improved. I don't know if overworld aspects were improved, but definitely certain aspects were improved from the first release. And then the American release of Red and Green is actually a newer version. Of Red and Blue is actually a newer version of the Red and Green. I don't know why they switched from green to blue. And I don't know why they never released a green version in the States. It's kind of a shame. Just because I feel like for the completeness of the starters, it would have been nice. But yeah, you can almost think of the Red and Green as being the first generation of Pokemon. Red and Blue being the second generation, and it wasn't until Yellow was released in Japan that kind of items that went back to Japan. There's kind of 3 generations in the first generation, or 3 subcategories. I think this will be a shorter episode. I'm thinking of decreasing the length of these episodes just so you guys can, kind of put them on and not have it play for a billion hours while you do other things. But one thing I wanted to mention was, back in that Pokemon Center, which I will try and get to at some point, is a con artist, basically, who tries to sell you one of the weakest Pokemon in the game, or the weakest, at least in Generation 1, it's definitely the weakest, most useless Pokemon in the game, Magikarp, for $500, which is fairly steep. And it's supposed to be kind of a trick, because he sells it as this great Pokemon. I'll get there in a second. He sells it as this great Pokemon, super strong, only for 500 Poké-dollars. Is it this guy? Yes. Tries to sell it as this big thing. Okay, maybe not as much, maybe more in childhood memories. We'll name him... what was my least favorite game that we covered? Is there no numbers? No numbers? Oh no, I can't do it then. L 4 D. The weirdest, stupidest name for a Pokemon. He tries to say the Magikarp, and you're like, at first you're like, oh god, why did I get this? It doesn't know anything about Splash. And it can't do anything. I think right before level 20 it finally learns like Tackle or something, and maybe level 15. Or that might just be in newer generations. And then if you stick with it for whatever reason, also later on you can catch them with your fishing rod for free. But for whatever reason, if you stick to it to level 20, it evolves into one of the stronger, most badass looking Pokemon in Generation 1, if not of all Pokemon. And that is Gyarados. So it's just like a neat little aspect that I always thought was funny. But there you have it, guys. We got to Mount Moon. I babbled on for however long the video is. I'm gonna save. And I'd like to thank you for watching. So as always, leave your suggestions in the comments below. Any of the questions I asked today or questions I asked in previous episodes, please, if you want, rate the video, subscribe. That'd be wonderful. And as always, guys, have fun and good luck.